There have been two. There was a continual sacrifice as described in Numbers. Perpetual holocaust, God said, to Israel. Perpetual holocaust, the sacrifice of Israel, described, annotated to the detail by God. Well, now wait just a minute here. Are you calling God a liar? The temple was destroyed in 70 A.D. Perpetual means eternal. The Jewish sacrifice has ended, and it has been ended for nearly 2,000 years. So now when we refer to Daniel, what sacrifice is it that he sees ending? And I can tell you from the words of the early church fathers, it's the sacrifice of the Mass that's ending. Kept in traditional Catholicism. Now you know why they're out to destroy you. Now you know why maintaining the saints, maintaining the faith delivered to the saints is so incredibly important. Because it's that sacrifice of the Mass that separates man from total and complete destruction. Just want to quickly refer you to the faith of the early fathers. This is stuff that needs to be read. William A. Juergens, Volume 1, there's a Volume 2 and a Volume 3. This can be purchased from Liturgical Press. I'll give them a plug. 1-800-858-5450. And the reason that this is so important is because today there is so much confusion about what Christianity is. You've got to go all the way back here to find out what it was. When you read this, when I read this, I said, woe is me. Because everything I thought that was Christianity, I found out wasn't. And I was reading my Bible, and I was doing all of the things that I was supposed to do, but the key to the sacrifice of the Mass is the Eucharist. And all of the early Christians were involved in the Eucharistic Supper. These popes knew all of this. The authority of rulers despised, sedition permitted and approved, and the popular passions urged on to lawlessness with no restraint save that of punishment. A change and overthrow, he said, of all things will necessarily follow. It will logically follow. If this continues, there will be an overthrow of all things. Yea, this change and overthrow is deliberately planned. There is nothing going on today in the United States of America by accident. Nothing. There is nothing going on in the Catholic Church today that's happening by accident. Nothing. Yes, there are people who are deceived. Yes, there are people who don't understand. Yes, there are wonderful, good-hearted, honest people who haven't got up to speed yet. But they need you. They need you. You can't go home and hide in a closet and watch television. You have to go out and tell them, because now you know the truth. God is the truth, the way, the life. He has not shut that down. The candle is still lit for a brief period of time. With the light that we have, with the knowledge that we have, even if it's a bit, we have to go out. So I'm too old to go out. I said, well, if you're too old to go out, then have somebody come in to you and talk to them. You're not too old. Truth is not young or old. It's truth. There is a truth. Don't quit. Don't give up. We're called to this battle. We pray and beseech you, point 31, venerable brethren. He's not talking to the laity here. He's talking to the priests and the bishops. To join your efforts with ours and earnestly to strive for the extirpation, that's removal of this foul plague which is creeping through the veins of the state. We wish it to be your rule, first of all, to tear away the mask from Freemasonry. Let people see it for what it is, Under the advice of Pope Leo XIII, let no man think that he may, for any reason whatsoever, join the Masonic sect if he values his Catholic name and his eternal salvation, as he ought to value them. Devote the greatest part of your care to, he's talking about the children, to their instruction, and do not think that any precaution can be great enough. Well, the public school's just down the street. I don't have the time to homeschool. I got to pay for my boat. It's so convenient. I'm just going to run them down there. And I know things are bad. I know they give out drugs. I know they have people who walk around almost naked. I know that the boys have rings in their nose and rings in their ears and rings in their bellies and rings in their lips. And I know none of that has anything to do with Christianity, that it's entirely pagan, the destruction of the body. But it's so inconvenient for me to homeschool. And I surely don't have the time to investigate all the private schools to decide which one is the proper one. So when they get home, I'll teach them the way it really is. That is, after I've watched the news, watched a couple of TV shows or a cute video. Pope Leo said, do not think that any precaution can be great enough. In other words, even if you take caution, it may not be enough. How well must we prepare our children? They are unwary, they are not cautious, they are inexperienced. Don't we love our kids enough to give them eternal salvation? Don't we love them enough to encourage them and bring them up in the faith? Let parents, religious instructors, and priests use every opportunity in their Christian teaching of warning their children and pupils of the infamous nature of these societies. Skip that. I want to go to the next one. Now, that was in 1884. Funny enough, should arrive at my house a reply by letter to Humanum Genus, which of course was Pope Leo XIII, by Albert Pike, who is also a pope. He's a pope too. He just happens to be the pope of the other hierarchical church, the Freemasonic Church, which is a hierarchy like the Catholic Church. The devil copies everything, you know. He's not very creative. Albert Pike, in his letter to the Pontiff, Pope Leo XIII, speaking as a representative for the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, said, quote, Rome does claim the right to prohibit precisely now, as she always did. She is never tolerant except upon compulsion. And Masonry denies her right to interfere with the free exercise of opinion. You see, people who want to have their opinion about everything essentially are Freemasons, whether they're in the fraternity or whether they're not. In their philosophy, they're already in. It will be said that the English-speaking Freemasonry will not receive Catholics into its bosom. This is not true. It will not receive Jesuits, because no oath that it can administer would bind the conscience of a Jesuit. You see, when that oath is administered to the Freemason, it binds his conscience. Albert Pike knows that, but the men whose consciences are bound in the lodge do not know that they are making a pact with the devil. He said about this encyclical, it proved upon perusal to be a declaration of war. That's another time we've heard about war. And a signal for a crusade against the rights of men. You see, the church has a crusade against the rights of men, says Pike, against the separation of church and state and the confinement of the church within the limits of its legitimate functions. Like not exposing heresy, like pulling people out of paganism. He says, Freemasonry is